What's going on, guys? I'm Tommy, and I'm coming at you with an action figure review. Today, I'm going to be reviewing Hasbro The Black Series Jango Fett. This is really sadly the only Jango Fett that exists in the Black Series other than the Gaming Greats basically re-release version that came out a few years ago. This is one of the most dated figures in the line that desperately needs a redo or a kind of tune-up on the sculpting, on the articulation. However, Hasbro just hasn't gotten around to it yet, and because I've waited so long, I finally decided to pick up a Jango Fett so at least I can have the character represented on my display. I got this Jango Fett figure from Ohio Nerd at the Toy-Hio Toy Show in October of this year. I'm just now getting around to reviewing it, and I'm very excited to do so. This figure comes in what used to be the standard packaging for the Black Series back in 2015 when this came out, almost 10 years ago now as of the release of this review. Up on the top here, you have the Star Wars The Black Series logo, a plastic window showing you the figure and some of his accessories there. You have a nice little black and white illustration down here showing you the character, as well as the character's name at the bottom left. On this side of the box, you have on a red siding, you have the number 15. This guy was a mainline release. Back when they were doing this style of packaging for the Black Series, there wasn't specific media-based packaging where they had the name of the show or the movie on the sides of the packaging. This was just one continuous main line. Jango Fett was number 15 in that main line. On the back of the box, you have that number 15 again, the Star Wars The Black Series logo, the character's name. We see that illustration that we saw on the front of the box blown up quite a bit, as well as a bio in about 1,000 different languages. This bio reads, "In the final years of the Republic, Jango Fett was regarded as the best bounty hunter in the galaxy. Fett is covered in a sleek armored suit that conceals his scarred face." And then down here you have just a bunch of your legalese. Please don't feed Jango Fett to your babies, guys. On this side of the box, you have a wraparound window with some of the larger text showing you the character's name, as well as smaller text showing you the character's name as well. On the bottom, we have even more legalese, and on the top, another window that helps let that light in for the packaging. With the packaging covered, let's get this guy opened so we can check him out. Alright, here's Jango Fett out of the box. Before we take a look at the figure, let's take a look at the accessories he comes with. The first being a removable helmet. This one is a helmet that you kind of put on the figure, however it is packed in separately. You'll see that it's got that dent that he gets after his fight with Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is pretty cool. And it does have some very nice blue paint applications. I'm not sure if I remember the different tones of blue being so striking here. However, if it's accurate, it's accurate. I do, however, love the wash that they've applied to the helmet. This does translate over to the armor on the rest of the figure. The rangefinder up here has some nice blue paint application as well. However, it doesn't seem to be adjustable, no articulation there. And then of course on the back, you've got some nice sculpted and painted detail too. And then on the inside, it's just that base plastic color that the flight suit is put in so that you can slip it over his head. And then in the pack here with the older Black Series figures, they would sometimes put the accessories in hand on the figure here. And you'll see this guy's legs are splayed out because he is not good at standing up straight. But we do have two of the twin blaster pistols here. These are identical to one another in both sculpt and paint here. They've got some really nice designs. I love all the curves of the prequel movies with all the designs not being as boxy as the original trilogy movies were. It's really, really cool. They just have some paint on the grips here. Other than that, they are sculpted in that silver color. These look great. These do have weapon storage. I'll show you that in a little bit. And now we take a look at Jango Fett. Now, this character sculpt has been used several times in the Black Series. Most recently, it was used with the brand new Pre-Vizsla figure, and I was not happy when I opened that figure. This is the root cause of all of those issues. It's a good looking figure, I will say that right out the gate. You know, and when I review this guy, I'm going to try to review him to 2015 standards, not to the the standards of today when it comes to Black Series figures. I gotta say, this guy is just, you know, he has some really nice wash on the armor. I will say it's on some spots, not all. Like the front armor on the legs here doesn't have that, but you'll see there is that weathering down there on the foot plates. He's also got some little silver here on the insides of the boots. That's a nice touch. And you'll see that he's got some really nice weathering done on all of the armor that's on that outer carrier there. The chest armor as well as the shoulder armor has that nice weathering. The face, this is obviously a pre-photoreal Black Series figure, so the face is just kind of painted on. I do think it gives across a Tamara Morrison look here. The hair also looks okay. It's nothing special, but back before photoreal, I can't really give them crap for, you know, not doing well on the face paint applications. Faces are very intricate and hard to do. It does, however, to me, give Tamara Morrison. And now we have the jetpack here. You'll see, I guess, one of the thrusters are severely warped. That kind of sucks, actually. I'll have to heat that up and fix that. However, the jetpack does look good, aside from this little warping down here at the thruster. It's got some great paint applications. I love the different tones of blue. If I'm not mistaken, this is the jetpack that he has early on in the movie as opposed to later. I could be wrong, though. And it does look really, really nice. Is it removable? It is removable, so it does have that peg system. The jetpack is removable. We will keep it attached to the figure for review purposes, though, and I'm going to find myself just keep fiddling with this thruster over and over. He does have some nice paint applications as well on these gauntlets, showing you the little rocket here on the left gauntlet. No paint applications on the right gauntlet, but the sculpted detail still looks really nice. And then, of course, he's got the belt here, which seems to be a loose rubbery overlay with the leg holsters here. These are mirrored holsters. I'll show you in just a little bit how those blaster pistols fit in there. But aside from that, that's pretty accurate to Jango Fett's look. There's not much else to say aside from the amazing wash they've given to the entire flight suit. I do have to definitely give Hasbro credit for that too. You know, I'll give them where credit is due on this figure because it's not going to be in many places, especially now that we're going to cover Articulation next. But I will say the wash on the flight suit looks awesome. They've done a great job adding texture and depth to that flight suit. Now, checking out the Articulation, this is going to be an extremely dated articulation scheme, so buckle up and get ready. The head is on a hinge and swivel, so he can actually look down quite a bit and he can look up quite a bit. We'll see if that changes with the helmet on. He does not get any tilt out of that head, maybe just a little because the joint is loose, and he can look right and left. This guy does not have butterfly joints, however, he does have a hinge and swivel at the shoulders. The shoulder armor kind of rides underneath the kind of carrier there, and you have almost 90 degrees of bend that way, and then he has a full 360 degrees of swivel. He does have a bicep swivel, which is just above the cables that connect on both of the gauntlets. This will lead to an extremely, extremely frustrating part of this figure for me, is these gauntlets, because he's got some single jointed elbows here. I wouldn't exactly call them deep cut. However, the elbows have really bad issues with stretching those cables out. And when they stretch the cables out, the cables tend to snap and pull. And the cables are extremely brittle, especially with this figure being a 10-year-old figure. Every figure that I've had that's on this sculpt has had these cables rip. And no matter what I do, because you do have a lot of swivels here, you have a swivel at the bicep, you also have the gauntlets at the base can swivel individually as well. No matter what you do, you're going to find yourself in a position where you can't really bend his elbows more than they can barely bend anyway, because you're afraid of pulling on those cables. He can get to, I want to say it's a 90-degree bend. And right here, down here, I don't know if you can see on camera, but I can see at the base of this gauntlet already, the paint has already worn away, and these are looking like they're going to snap. It's ridiculous, and it's probably, honestly, one of the worst design choices in the entire Black Series line. Without the cable snapping, you could probably get his elbows too close to the 90-degree mark. He does also have some hinge and swivels at the wrists, so the wrists do swivel. He's got a horizontal hinge joint on the right wrist and another horizontal hinge joint at the left wrist. He's got a ball joint at the midsection, which is going to get you some okay range, not too terribly much due to the sculpting of the belt here, which is very bulky, as well as the carapace on the midsection here. He's got some ball joints at the hips, which do have some decent range. I will say there is a flexi material made to the little leg harnesses here for the holsters, and I wish that same plastic was applied to these cables on the arms. He has a thigh swivel that's hidden underneath the leg armor here, and that also is not affected by all of the harness work on these holsters here. I'm very happy about that. He's got some very, very ugly pinned double jointed knees. These are extremely, honestly, these are probably some of the worst offenders in the Black Series line for how ugly they look. And then down here at the ankles, he does have the classic Black Series forward facing pin for rocker, and he has a hinge at the ankle, but he can't really use it forward at all because the foot armor runs into the shin armor, and then he has some really good back on those joints. I'm sure for 2015 this was like pretty acceptable articulation, you know, but you're probably again wondering, why do I have to splay the legs out so much on this guy? It's because if you want this guy to just stand up like a regular person, he's too back heavy, and it actually has nothing to do even with the jetpack here. If you put the legs together, he just wants to fall backwards. There's nothing I can do to get this guy to stand up. I have to really kind of push on the fronts of the feet, and especially when you have that jetpack attached, it's just so much worse, amplifies the issue. He can barely stand up straight at all without having to splay the legs out or lean him forward so much that it looks a little bit ridiculous. He looks like the jetpack's too heavy for him, like, you know, he's had a bad day at school or something. It's very frustrating, and it causes a lot of shelf dives for other figures that are on this body. As far as our removable helmet goes, this does slip over the head very nicely, so we can thankfully get rid of our non-photoreal face. And again, the figure does look good, and that's kind of how I feel about this action figure mold, this sculpt for the Jango Fett body. Every figure they do on it looks pretty decent when it's just standing still in a idle pose like this, but when you're trying to pose it up and articulate it, it just constantly falls over. As far as the blaster pistols go, you do have weapon storage for both of those. Those do fit very snugly into their respective holsters. These are interchangeable. There's no left and right there. And once they're in the holsters, they do pass the shake test with friction. Let's see if we can get Jango posed up in a couple cool poses and kind of see what we can do with him. All right, here's our first pose here, and it's really quite unfortunate because this guy doesn't look terrible, and once you get those legs splayed out wide like that, he does have a much better center of gravity, but it's just such a shame. There's so much more I want to do with this figure, but because the ankle joints, for example, don't lean forward at all, and he's already a back-heavy figure, it makes it very difficult to get some of those more dynamic poses. Miraculously, I was able to get this guy in a one-legged pose. However, it was extremely difficult to do. And again, I think my biggest gripes on this guy tend to be the elbow articulation being so limited and the hinge joints on the ankles being so limited in the forward motion. It's just so difficult to get this guy into cool-looking poses when that articulation is so limited. It just makes it so difficult, and it really brings down my enjoyment of the figure. Just for comparison here, on the left side, I have the Mandalorian Loyalist figure that came out in 2020. This was a Walmart exclusive. And then on the right, I have the Pre-Vizsla figure, which actually came out last year, and they decided to use this same figure sculpt on that figure. It is so frustrating. You can see one of the cables has already snapped on my Mandalorian Loyalist on the left here, and that's just from bending the elbow. Things should not break when you're flexing the articulation of the figure in a way that's not pushing it too hard. I wasn't even in the full range of motion of the elbow bend when that snapped, and it was very frustrating for me. It sucks because these characters all look so badass, and they present themselves really well, but one thing you'll see between all these figures is how splayed the legs are here, and that's because that's the only way you can get them to stand up straight without a figure stand, because of the heavy backpacks and the incredibly poor leg articulation. So honestly, I would say for you and your collection, if you don't already have a Jango Fett in your Black Series collection, I would say pass on this older one and hope that Hasbro releases a new one in the future. This figure is incredibly hard to deal with, hard to pose, and it sucks too because Jango Fett is such an incredibly cool character, and I wanted the character representation on the shelf. It's just very disappointing that this is the best the Black Series has to offer for this character right now. But with that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did and you're not yet subscribed, subscribe to Blitz Transmissions. I've got awesome Star Wars content coming out all the time. Make sure to check out my social media, all of which is linked in the description below. If you'd like to see my action figure reviews early, definitely check out my channel membership, Rancor Battalion, also in the description below. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. I'll catch you for the next one, and may the Force be with you.